Roland, Maurice, welcome. Roland, to you first. What is NEOM doing when it comes to the energy transition? What is your contribution?
Well, our contribution is first of all that we're designing a true 100% renewable energy system, something which I believe has never been built before on that scale. So it's going to consist of 100% renewable energy. It's going to consist of 100% green water. Right. So we produce water from desalination using renewable energy. And we're using a new process which is looking at zero liquid discharge. So the brine is not going to be dumped back into the sea. And the other exciting aspect is the combination of energy and water is hydrogen. So we're building a true hydrogen economy. And that's, I believe, our contribution and the boldness of the actions we're doing.
Why the focus on hydrogen? What's so good about
A,
hydrogen?
because we believe hydrogen is and will be an essential part of the future energy transition. We believe that molecules will transport in future a fair amount of green energy. We're also blessed in NEOM and in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with sun and wind. So we're having the perfect conditions for producing green hydrogen, using it A, in the country or in NEOM, but B, also for export, like the big project we're developing right now.
Maurice, to expand this out a little bit, for the industry overall, where are the opportunities with hydrogen, to your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Georgie, and thanks, Roland. I think it's a great question. Hydrogen is for us an absolutely essential part of the mix in solving and getting to net zero. We've done some work, some research around this, and we've looked at the different levers that are out there to get us to net zero, and in pretty much all cases, you get to some hard to debate sectors where hydrogen must be the solution. Now, that doesn't mean it's always the solution, and it means that you need to think carefully about which use cases. There's certainly some very immediate use cases, which is, for example, replacing gray hydrogen in a refinery, which have a very, very high willingness to pay, and that's where we start. And then you go down and you look at the other use cases that are out there. They are particularly attractive when you have some of the conditions that Roland was talking about, which is very high levels of irradiation, very high levels of wind, and you get yourself to a reasonable price on hydrogen. Not all of the world is there yet, and I think that's one of the challenges we're seeing out there.
What will it take to overcome those challenges to enable this to scale up? What is, I suppose, the unlock?
Yeah. So I could give some views, but I'd like to hear too how you think. I think that for us, if you're looking about green hydrogen, right? 3/4 of the cost of green hydrogen is typically the power costs. It's back to why it's such an attractive production site in Saudi Arabia, and you can indeed for local usages that is excellent. Where it starts getting a little bit trickier and you need to figure out then, when I come back to the willingness to pay, is when you transport that internationally, you of course need to then create ammonia or methanol or use other transportation molecules to get there. Then it starts increasing the cost, right? And then you start looking at the alternative, which is creating hydrogen elsewhere with lower levels of or higher levels of energy cost, lower levels of wind and solar utilization, and that gets you to higher costs. So it's that balance between the two. And I think that to get the industries really going, policymakers are going to play an incredibly important role in creating the conditions and the incentives that are out there. We've seen this, for example, in the US with the IRA and the Infrastructure Jobs Act, which are actually creating incentives for people to invest in hydrogen.
Roland, to you, what's the unlock?
That's a very good question because, the project we have developed, which reached financial close this year, which is an 8.5 billion investment, is unlocking, in our view, the market. When we made the decision to build that plant, not one regulation was in place, not one market was really commercially active. So we did, together with Air Products and Aqua, a very bold move. And in particular, it was Air Products making a 30 years offtake contract. So I think it needs a bit of guts to unlock the market. Because if you look at the whole story, I'm now more than 15 years in the hydrogen community, so to say. The can continues to be kicked down the road. and I see a certain risk at the moment because everyone's speaking about policymakers, regulations, because in principle the technologies are mature. They will of course reduce cost over time. The missing piece at the moment is price. So everyone seems to be waiting what kind of incentives are coming. I don't want to sign offtake contracts before I know what the incentives are going to be. But in principle, you can start doing that, right? So it needs a bit of boldness, I would say, because the benefit of doing it is that you're the first, you're the early mover, and you can certainly influence price because you have the product.
I agree. It's about getting companies out of their typical comfort zone. And what you're actually calling out is this price risk that they take on board, and it's a longer term price risk. I think if we could find the right commercial models to de-risk that, to give them the incentive, as you say, to be the first mover, to help define that, and it allows them at the same time to benefit if and when the prices come down, that commercial model can be a benefit.
Yeah, and I think one very important piece of the equation is we're all talking about price, and turning into renewables, into green energy, green hydrogen is more costly than the conventional way. Yes, true, but look around ourselves and the climate, what we did in the conventional way. So if people still believe that if we want to turn back the wheel on climate change, it's not going to come for free.
Yeah.
So it will be at higher price, and the costs will be higher than what we're
But
used to.
what's the cost if you don't do it? Is that the...
Exactly. So I think there needs to be a basic understanding that there's no way we're going to have it at the same price, comparable. And even if we get subsidies and incentives from governments, they will be not sustainable. They will end at some time, and the markets need to adapt for that.
Yeah. So where I end up on it, I say, first of all, I like what you've put forward on this risk piece. So I'd say number one is we need to get companies out of their comfort zone and allow them to take a bit more risk, right? Number two is I think it helps to focus on the highest willingness to pay use cases, which in other words means those that don't have another better alternative.
Right.
And the third is, and this is where NEOM's doing exactly that, is focusing on the lowest cost wind and solar production, because that is what makes hydrogen actually very economical.
Maurice, Roland, thank you so much.
Thank you, Georgie.